I have finished the first chapter of The Sunlit Man. And I am so glad I waited till after Wind and Truth, because not gonna lie, if I went from Rhythm of War to this, to Wind and Truth, I'd be like, what is happening? It's so crazy. Granted, Nomad, this guy, he curses like a Rosharan, which is cool. He says like storms and damnation. And I was like, okay, I know where he's from. Got it. Or at least spent a lot of time there. I don't know where he's from. I don't even know this man. But anyway. And then he's, I guess, a radiant squire. Because he mentioned like squire to an auxiliary. Like can't turn into a weapon. He's like not allowed to have weapons anymore, which is really interesting. And he mentioned like skipping. He's like, he skipped, but he didn't have like enough power to go somewhere. This is so like sci-fi and like really cool. And he like showed up and he's like, oh shit, where am I? Okay, well, and he checks his battery and he's like, well, I don't have enough. Not like his actual battery, but he doesn't have enough investiture to skip again. And he's trying to go somewhere. And then these guys show up and they have like caved out torsos with like ember flame hearts, which, you know, hey, actually, same. And they like beat the shit out of him with a bat. And then they like try to chain him to a peg, and they have hover cycles. Okay. And he's like, I gotta get out of here. That sun is very hot. It kind of reminds me of Pitch Black. You know, the first like Chronicles of Riddick movie with Vin Diesel, where like the sun, like if it catches you, it'll like burn you alive. Kind of reminds me of that. And he's like, ooh, the sun. That's an invested sun. Shit. And he like lassos a hover cycle and just gets pulled away. What is this book gonna be? I mean, like, to come from epic fantasy, shard blades and shard plates and gods and stuff, to be like, all right, skipping to different planets, I assume, and hover cycles. But also a bat and, like, flame hearts. Which I guess the flame heart is honestly the most, like, easily transitionable thing here. Because, you know, you got, like, gem hearts, but now there's flame hearts. But, yeah. There's crowbars now and hover cycles, and I have no idea what to expect from this, but hey, we're here. Chapter 2 down. And listen, I forgot to mention before, he talked about he's been to Taldane, which is pretty cool. And he also mentioned that he's on the run from the Night Brigade, whatever that is. But Chapter 2 is basically just Nomad getting beat up, captured once more, and he found a floating city. So, okay. This book is off to a wild start. Okay, chapter 3 down, and Brandon Sanderson is slow dripping information into my veins. The giant floating city is actually a bunch of ships locked into each other, and like the hover cycles also lock into it to add more propulsion. That is so cool. I love that. The fact that Nomad can't fight, or like his body tenses up, it like freezes, so he can't, I mean, he can defend himself. He can go on defense and he's fine, but he can't actively like want to do harm, which is really interesting. And I guess the ships are like dropping seeds onto the ground, and because the sun is so invested, the plants and crops like immediately grow and then they harvest. Brandon Sanderson is a creative genius. How do you think of stuff like that? That is so cool. But then Nomad, he mentioned that he was a scholar and then a soldier, and now he's been on the run for like years? Who is this guy? Okay. I finished chapter 4. It ended with the ship exploding, which is crazy. The torment is like a thing that keeps him from making weapons, and it slipped up for a second, and he was able to summon auxiliary as a shard blade. So it's like, okay, Radiant. But then, listen, I don't know what this torment thing is. I like that he's spitting the dude's face to try and make him stab him so that auxiliary can soak up the investiture. But there's something in the back of my mind. Let me walk you through this. Nomad is clearly a world hopper. He mentioned Taldane. He curses like he's from Roshar. He's now wherever this is. So okay, so he's a world hopper, right? And when he summoned Auxiliary as a shard blade, Auxiliary said, "Oh, I thought you weren't able to do that anymore." Okay. And then Auxiliary said, or Nomad said to Auxiliary, "I liked you better when you were alive." And Auxiliary said, "And whose fault is that?" This is gonna sound crazy because I don't ever do like theories and stuff or predictions. I feel so dumb about to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And don't tell me if I'm right, but is Nomad Sigzil? Because, listen, the last time I saw Sigzil, Hoyd gave him the Dawn Shard and was like, "You need to get out of here. You cannot be seen by this." And he's like, "All right, well, here we go." Nomad is like, a word used for somebody who doesn't have a home, that moves from place to place to place to place to place. He's on the run. Okay. And the fact that he was like, "Oh, I liked you better when you were alive," and he's like, "Well, whose fault was that?" As if he was a Deadeyes, because Sigzil broke his oaths to save. Well, it wasn't Auxiliary. I don't think he was named Auxiliary. It was something else. Yeah, and then he was like, "I don't think you were allowed to do that anymore because he wasn't a Radiant anymore because he broke his oaths." So, and he seems to know a lot about stuff, and he also knows a shit ton about like BEUs and like science and investiture and shit. And Sigzil always knew more things than he should have. But is Nomad Sigzil? I mean, I guess I'll find out. But the second they started saying all that thing about Radiance and you should be able to do that and whatever, I was like, huh. I've finished chapter 8, and I have so many questions because, again, we're still just like getting glimpses, and it may not be Sigzil, but there's a lot of shit that he's saying that I was like, well, one thing he said was like, "Oh, he used some wordplay that his former master would have enjoyed," and I'm like, interesting. And apparently Ox and Nomad have been together for like decades. Crazy. He did mention that his homeworld was Roshar. So it's like, all right. And then he said that being able to feed on different types of investiture is like an effect of what he once held. Okay. And then he said what he once held is also like the source of the torment. It's like, all right. I don't know anything about this torment stuff, but like holding stuff, the only thing I know of that gives you sort of powers for like holding it or has effects on you from holding it is a Dawn Shard. So, again, Sigzil was holding a Dawn Shard last time I checked, but okay, it's not Sigzil, I get it. But I mean, the kind of rebels, the people that he's with now, the greater good, they're Threnodites from Shadows for Silence, which is really cool because Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell is, I think, my favorite short story of Brandon Sanderson's. So that's cool, but why are they there on this planet with like the sun when they had like, I don't know what's going on there. And then Nomad mentioned that he had a cousin back home, and I was like, cousin? That's a Lopen word! But there's no way. There's no way. This guy is not Lopen. Definitely not. But so yeah, that was happening. They called him a Sunlit Man, which I was like, hey, it's the title. So that was pretty cool. But he said there's Scadrians, and Scadrians are like involved, and these people had like a Scadrian authorization key, which is like, what is happening right now? Yet another reason I am so glad I read this after Wind and Truth, because authorization keys, and then he's like, the Scadrians, what are they doing? And then he mentioned that the Scadrians had like starships. What? So Scadrians, I guess they got spaceships now. What? That is, honestly, that's a lot to take in. That is a lot to take in. I gotta digest that a little bit. But listen, I'm now gonna start chapter 9, and this book is awesome. I have finished chapter 11. I feel like Brandon Sanderson's messing with me right now because Wit showed up. And before he did, Nomad was talking about how he remembers a bunch of men having stew by the fire. Like, this is a Bridge 4 person. And Listen, I got like 20 reasons why it's Sigil, but apparently it isn't. His hair was burned away by the sun. That's crazy that the sun is that magnified. It's just like burns your hair off, like, oof. But he talks about like he was naive and he was like concerned with numbers and just like. But then he sees a man in a uniform, like in this bright light, and he thinks it's Kaladin. So I'm like, oh shit, he knows Kaladin, but it was Hoyd. And then Wit said that Nomad was his favorite student. What about Sigil? Sigil was his apprentice for like forever. Wit also mentioned that his childhood was in like the land of dragons, which is just insane. I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that there are dragons. But just, who is this guy? I have finished chapter 16, and I gotta say, I really like this book. I like that the whole world is like, the lore around it is based around the sun, and the fact that like their souls, their bodies get left out in the sun, and then it basically cremates them, and they turn into these like soul rocks, sun soul, whatever they call them, and then they use those as like batteries or like power packs, which is kind of wild. Sun Hearts, that's what they're called, Sun Hearts. So I got the Sun Hearts, and then the Cinder King, he knows about Roshar because he killed someone from Roshar like forever ago, and he's like, hey, here's what's left of him. And he was able to like translate his book and stuff like that. But he mentioned a Silverlight guidebook. Do I know what Silverlight is? Like what's going on there? I have no idea. Also, William Demerit, the narrator for this book, Ox, the voice he uses for Ox sounds a lot like Rock, in my opinion, which is really fun. But what's even more fun is the Cinder King, for whatever reason, the way that he is performing him, he sounds so much like Heath Ledger's Joker. It's like Nomad walks in, did I ever tell you how I got these scars? Yeah, you want to understand how I got this sun heart? I burned a man, you see. It's just so wild to me, and honestly, I kind of love it. Hey, so I just finished chapter 20. Let me read a little something for you. That was different, he admitted. I used to love that, Ox said before. Nomad breathed out heavily, squeezing his eyes shut. It wasn't your fault. I said yes to Hoyd, and I bonded you. You didn't know what either would do. I let the Dawn Shard consume us, Auxiliary. I let it feed on you. I salvaged a little, this bit of my mind, the last fragment of my soul. Wit's fault as much as it was Nomad's, done ostensibly to protect the Cosmere. Wit had asked him to carry something known as a Dawn Shard, a well of unimaginable investiture designed as a weapon. I knew it! And now, like, it's been years, and, like, Ox is not Vienta, which is interesting, and just stuff. What is he doing? Why is he here? What's going on? It's been years? So, what? What? I finished chapter 21, and a couple things. Number one, somebody mentioned Chris. He said this is Chris's second law, and I was like, oh, finally, a Chris mention. Also, now that I know that it's Sigil, which, let's be honest, I always knew. Now that I know it's him, so his spren was Vienta. That's the one that he broke his oaths to. And the last time I saw Sigil was in that caravan in Shadesmar with Zet's spren. But Zet's spren, his name was like Numbers. It wasn't Ox. So either A, it's not him, or B, it is him, and he like changed his name. Like, that's allowed, I guess, if your name is just Numbers. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Oh, right. Yeah, because Pattern was like, I have a name, but it's way too long to even worry about, so he's Pattern. It's Zeth Sprint. It's gotta be, right? It's gotta be. It is, I've decided. Yep. So Rebecca's sister is Allergy, and she was a Cinder Heart working for the Cinder King. And so they're running experiments, and we got a lot of science shit happening right now. And so I guess Nomad, he is trying to figure out a plan to make these ships able to go into space to get away from all of everything. But the chorus is like a bunch of shades, which is kind of wild. And they also can like make stuff. He just like, hey, here's what I need. And they're like, all right, 1 second. It's going to take like an hour. And they can like build machines out of materials and stuff. Like, what? I finished chapter 27, and I like that story that Nomad told about from his people, like why bright eyes have bright eyes. I was like, I'm down with this. I'm down with this. But then that chapter ended with the Night Brigade showing up. And he mentions that, like, they have a thing for ghosts, they command, like, an army of the dead, and apparently they're being paid by somebody. So, what is any of that? And why are they after him? Like, is this something that he did personally? Does this have to do with the Dawn Shard? Does this have to do with Hoyd? I don't know. Hey, so I'm halfway through chapter 40 now. I'm just blazing, pun intended, actually. Not intended, but now intended now that I said it. God, why am I this way? Chapter 40. I'm halfway through, so let's catch up on some stuffs. One, the Night Brigade showed up, which is not good. And he mentioned that, like, they're paid by somebody else, and they're also looking for him because they're looking for the Dawn Shard. And I guess there's a way that they could, like, put a spike in him and it would make him into a compass, basically, and lead him to the Dawn Shard. And also they have a thing about ghosts. So, very curious as to what all that is. He fought 20 Chard, which is awesome. Kaladin, I feel like Kaladin would be very proud. And mind you, he did this without, like, anything, which is crazy, on, like, next to no investiture at all. And, so they're flying and they're doing all this other crazy stuff, and Ox turned into a shield, like, the size to cover an entire ship? That's cool. I like that. That's pretty neat. Though he did say that a piece of his shard plate, like, showed up. And then it made me think, he's not on Roshar anymore, but he has, like, Ox's voice in his head, and Ox was a Spren, is a Spren, what's left of a Spren, and now his shard plate, like, showed up, so what does that mean? And how does he have access to it not on Roshar? I didn't know if that was possible, if Spren could leave Roshar, but I guess kinda, which is wild. Also, he did officially say that his name was Sigzil. He was talking to Rebecca, and I was like, what's your real name? He's like, Sigzil. And then he started talking about it. And then he started, like, tearing up just hearing it for the first time. Because he's been gone for, like, decades? That's insane. Also, poor guy. To spend that whole time fighting in that war in Wind and Truth, and, like, trying his best to hold, and then Wit shows up and is like, hey, please take this. And then, like, damns him to traverse the Cosmere by himself on the run. Like, that's rough. But now, they gave him a new name, Zellion, which honestly, that's a cool name. That is a cool name. I like that. But now, Sigzil is becoming like Wit, and then he's going to have so many names. Which, God, Brandon Sanderson, too many names. Please. But anyway, I'm midway through chapter 40, and there's only like 52 chapters and an epilogue, I think. So, hey, we're handling this. I'm pumped. I have finished The Sunlit Man, so we're going to talk about it this last little bit, and then the full review video is next. But, firstly, the Dawn Chaser is a very cool name for a ship, especially one that is very, like, sun-based. I don't know, I just thought that was cool. This whole Scadrian facility is crazy to think about. Going from, like, Mistborn days, you know, like, fantasy, medieval, to even, like, Westerns and stuff. And now there's, like, labs, and they're experimenting on people, and there's authorization keys, and they talked about there's, like, time tellers, whatever that is. And they were working with the Cinder King to, like, study the people. Kind of wild. And they just, like, don't care at all about the people of Canticle, assuming that that's how you pronounce that. Yeah, they're just, like, watching them, like, National Geographic people and just studying them, and they're like, we can recharge sun hearts. Like, oh, yeah. And he's like, why did you not tell them? They're like, I don't know, they're subjects, which is wild. Like, and then they mentioned, like, we did what we were required to do by interplanetary law. There's interplanetary laws, like there's planets working together now, which is kind of wild to think about. And like, if there is there like a body of government? And there's like, is there a leader or like a parliament or something that like, just that word interplanetary, the interplanetary law, that phrase is like, the indications are crazy about that. Because like, obviously Kelsier has like the Ghost Bloods and, you know, they're kind of doing their thing. But yeah, the fact that there's like a body of government that made laws that's interplanetary. So maybe the plan did work. Maybe he got the other planets to like come together to realize the real threat of retribution. I don't know. That was crazy. And this scientist woman is at the very least a coin shot, because Sigil was there and she like steel pushed him by his belt buckle backwards. So I was like, oh! So is she a coin shot, or is she like a full Mistborn? I don't know. This timeline, I'm not even going to try to understand where that is. Ox giving his final essence to Sigil, that was sad. He's like running on low battery the whole time. And then Ox is like, hey, I mean, I can give you the rest. And that would give you it back. And he does it. That was sad. He got his full shard plate and shard blade back, which was cool. Rebecca was about to get turned into a Chard, and Elegy stopped it, and then she became the Sunlit one, which was cool. I like that a lot. Sigil taking the Cinder King's investiture, because he's like now connected to the planet, and just like soaks him up right before the sun blasts him over, and he just like jumper teleports, skips out of there. That was cool. I like that a lot. The Night Brigade. I don't know what is happening there, because they seem to be kind of like it was mentioned that they're semi-mercenary. I guess they're like paid to do stuff. But who's paying them, number one? And they're like an authority. Like, they were upset that the Scadron people like didn't tell them everything. Like, why would they have to? Are they like a interplanetary police force or mercenary squad? Who do they work for? I don't know. And they mentioned one of them had like a continuity chain. What does that mean? And then the admiral who's the leader of the Night Brigade, she has like shades with her, like just hanging out and shit. What does that mean? That's crazy. Because the Cinder people, what were they called? The Beaconites, they have like a tank full of like shades that can like make them shit with schematics and materials. But the Admiral also has shades, so like, do her shades also do a similar thing? I don't know. The end scene, the epilogue scene with Sigil on the beach by himself was very sad. And the fact that he like went through all of that and he goes, well, I'm alone now. I don't even have Ox in my head, so I guess I just got to keep running. Like, that poor guy. And this is Hoyt's fault. That's so sad. I hope we get more of him. I really do. Yeah. Also, I've said it in every video since almost. I am so glad I read this after Wind and Truth. So to anyone, because originally my order was to read Sunlit Man very last. Everyone that convinced me to read it right after Wind and Truth, thank you. I agree with you. I think that was the best way to experience this story. But yeah, hey. Full review coming next. All right, I have officially finished The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. Let's talk about it. This book was awesome. I loved it. It's so good. Honestly, probably my second favorite novel of his, I think. Well, hold on. Third favorite, because I'm going to put Secret History in the novel section. Although Secret History doesn't feel like its own kind of thing. It's like an addendum to it. Beside the point. I love this. It's second only behind, oh my God. I'm leaving all that in. Secret History is its own thing, so I'm not counting it. It's my second favorite novel I have read, like standalone, behind Edge Dancer. And the reason I love Edge Dancer is because of how much I love Lift. If I didn't love Lift as much as I did, this would probably be my favorite standalone so far. It was so good. It was a bit of a different experience because, I spent a good portion of the beginning trying to figure out who Nomad was. And I was pretty certain early on, but then some of you guys gaslit me pretty effectively and made me doubt myself. But it worked out. This was cool. I loved the whole kind of basis around the sun and their investiture in the core, and between the core and the sun is what kind of cooked everything, and the sun hearts and the cinder hearts and the cinder king. Everything about it I just thought was so cool. And then he's like building ships and they're flying away and there's raiders and you're trying to outrun the sun. This book was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's really sad, the fact that Sigil, one of Bridge 4 is by himself on the run, apparently for decades, which is crazy. And he's on his own. Like, Bridge 4 should not be alone, And also, he's like really going through it this whole book with stuff that, like, I don't know, if Kaladin was around, he could, give him a little bit of therapy and like help him out. But he can't, because he's on his own. And he's like world hopping and he's like quick. And the Night Brigade. The Night Brigade sounds absolutely terrifying. Like, yeah, I said it in kind of like my last video of this, is like, where do they fit into all that? Who are they working for? Like, what's their goal? Because they mentioned, like, they're after the Dawn Shard, clearly. And they want Sigil so they can use him to get to the Dawn Shard. But why do they want the Dawn Shard? Adonalsium's already gone. So I'm very interested to see if, like, the Night Brigade becomes this kind of bigger problem within the Cosmere. But then also, like, you got all the stuff that happened in Wind and Truth. And how does that play into all of this? And also the Ghost Bloods and, like, the stuff at the end of Era 2. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening on the big macro scale. And I'm very interested to see where it kind of comes in, how it comes into play. But, no, this book was so good. It was also cool because it was the most space age, modern. Like, Era 2 was pretty modern in the fact that we have, like, guns and cars and stuff. But this felt very different, and one of the things that, a lot of people have mentioned with, like, Era 3 is that it's going to be, in the 80s, and we're going to keep getting more modern, ultimately leading to, like, sci-fi, essentially. And my initial reaction was like, oh, Mistborn sci-fi, I don't know. But just having, because my whole thing is, like, how is Allomancy going to play into this? Because that's the coolest magic system, in my opinion. And so, I was wondering how Allomancy is going to come into play in, like, a futuristic setting. And even something as small as that Scadrian science lady pushing Sigil back by his belt buckle. I was like, oh, cool. Okay, that's how it goes. So it's still a part of it. It still works. You know what I mean? Not that it wouldn't work, but I just wasn't sure how he was going to do it. But I thought this was cool. The end note was neat, that he was like, I wanted to give back to, like, the people who bring life to my stories, because he wrote, Tress for his wife and Yumi for his wife, and he was like trying things as an author for these secret novels. But the Sunlit Man was cool. I really, really enjoyed this. But now that that's done, next up, Tress of the Emerald Sea. I'm so excited for this. I've heard nothing but great things about it, and I think it's going to be really cool. So yeah, next up, Tress of the Emerald Sea, Sunlit Man, 2 thumbs up.